What if I told you that the most addictive thing you can do to a man during intimacy has absolutely nothing to do with your hands, your body, or any physical technique you've ever learned? You clicked on this video expecting secrets about touch, didn't you? Maybe you thought I'd reveal some hidden erogenous zone or a magical technique that would make him obsessed with you. But here's what every woman needs to understand. While you've been focused on touching his body, you've completely missed the part of him that's actually starving for connection. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But here's the problem. Most women are trying to create a chemical reaction with the wrong substance entirely. See, men have been conditioned since childhood to disconnect from their emotional core. Society taught them that vulnerability equals weakness, that needing emotional intimacy makes them less masculine. So they built these invisible walls around the very part of themselves that craves deep connection. And while you're trying to reach him through physical touch, he's unconsciously protecting the one place where real addiction, the healthy, beautiful kind, actually begins. Today, I'm going to show you how to touch the untouchable part of him, how to reach past his defenses and connect with his psychological essence in a way that creates genuine, lasting devotion. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding the profound psychology of masculine vulnerability and how your authentic feminine presence can awaken something in him he didn't even know existed. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most powerful women in history weren't the ones who mastered physical seduction, but those who learned to touch a man's soul. And more importantly, you'll know exactly how to do it yourself. The myth of physical touch, why it's not about where, but how you touch his soul. Here's the uncomfortable truth that no one talks about. While you've been Googling how to drive him crazy in bed, you've been solving the wrong equation entirely. Think about it. If physical touch was the secret to creating deep masculine devotion, then every woman who mastered bedroom techniques would have men completely addicted to them. But we both know that's not how it works, don't we? You've probably seen women who seem to have this mysterious power over men, and it's rarely the ones who are the most physically skilled. Carl Jung discovered something revolutionary about human psychology. We all wear what he called a persona, a mask we show the world to protect our true selves. For men, this persona is particularly thick around anything that might be perceived as emotional neediness or vulnerability. Society has trained them to believe that their worth comes from being strong, independent, and emotionally self-sufficient. But here's what's happening beneath that mask. There's a part of every man that's been starving for genuine emotional recognition since childhood. Jung called this the anima, the feminine aspect within every man that holds his capacity for deep feeling, intuition, and emotional connection. When you focus only on physical touch, you're essentially trying to feed a man's body, while his soul is dying of thirst. It's like offering someone water when what they really need is to be seen, understood, and emotionally nourished at the deepest level. Let me give you a real example. Sarah thought she was losing her partner because their physical intimacy had become routine. She tried everything, new techniques, different approaches, even suggestions from friends. Nothing worked. But then something shifted. During one intimate moment, instead of focusing on what she was doing with her hands, she looked directly into his eyes and said, "I see how hard you work to take care of everyone. You don't have to be strong with me right now." He broke down crying, not because of anything she did physically, but because, for the first time in years, someone had touched the part of him that he'd been hiding from the world. That's when their real intimacy began. You see, when Jung talked about psychological transformation, he understood that true connection happens when we meet someone's hidden self, not their public persona, but their authentic, vulnerable core. For men, this core has been so deeply buried under layers of social conditioning that most of them don't even know it exists anymore. The women who create genuine addiction in men, the healthy, beautiful kind of devotion that lasts decades, they understand this secret. They know that while his body might respond to physical stimulation, his soul responds to something entirely different, being truly seen and accepted in his vulnerability. This is why some women can have a man completely devoted to them without being the most physically attractive or skilled. They've learned to touch the untouchable, that hidden part of him that's been waiting his entire life for someone safe enough to emerge with. But how exactly do you reach this hidden part of him? How do you touch his soul when he spent years building walls around it?
The psychology of masculine vulnerability, the blind spot he doesn't even know he has. Here's something that will change how you see every man in your life. From the moment boys can walk, they're taught a devastating lie. They're told that their emotional needs make them weak, that vulnerability is feminine, and that real men handle everything alone. By the time he reaches adulthood, this conditioning runs so deep that he's not even consciously aware of his own emotional hunger. It's like psychological starvation. He feels the emptiness, but he's been trained to interpret it as something else entirely. Maybe he thinks he needs more success, more achievement, more control. But what he actually needs is something he's been taught to fear: emotional intimacy. Carl Jung understood this phenomenon perfectly. He observed that men often project their need for emotional connection onto external achievements or relationships, never realizing that what they're truly seeking is integration with their own suppressed emotional nature. Think about the men in your life. Have you ever noticed how they can seem completely confident and self-assured, yet there are moments, usually when they think no one is watching, where you catch glimpses of something else? A fleeting look of uncertainty, a moment of genuine emotion before they quickly mask it again? That's his authentic self trying to surface. That's the part of him that's been waiting decades for someone safe enough to appear with. Here's what most women don't understand. Men aren't emotionally unavailable by choice. They're emotionally unavailable by training. From childhood, they've learned that showing vulnerability leads to rejection, mockery, or being seen as less than. So they've developed what psychologists call emotional armor, protective mechanisms that keep their true feelings hidden even from themselves. But here's the fascinating part. This armor has a weakness that most women never discover. While men have been trained to resist emotional pressure or demands, they're completely defenseless against something else entirely: genuine emotional safety. Let me explain what I mean. When you try to get him to open up or share his feelings, you're essentially asking him to remove his armor while he still perceives threat. But when you create an environment where his vulnerability is not only safe, but actually welcomed and cherished, something magical happens. His defenses don't just lower, they dissolve. This is why the most powerful women in relationships aren't the ones who demand emotional intimacy, but those who create space for it to emerge naturally. They understand that masculine vulnerability is like a rare flower. It only blooms in the right conditions. Carl Jung wrote about this phenomenon in his concept of the anima, the feminine aspect in every man that holds his capacity for deep feeling and emotional wisdom. For most men, the anima has been so suppressed that it only emerges in moments of complete safety and acceptance. When you learn to recognize and honor this hidden part of him, you're not just touching his emotions, you're touching the very essence of who he is beneath all his conditioning. And once a man feels truly seen and accepted at this level, he doesn't just want you, he needs you in a way that goes far beyond physical attraction. This is the secret that creates genuine masculine devotion, not manipulation, not games, not even physical chemistry, but the profound relief of finally being able to be authentic with another human being. But how do you create this kind of emotional safety? How do you become the woman who can access this hidden part of him when he spent years protecting it from everyone else? The answer lies in understanding something Jung called the power of feminine presence. And it's more transformative than anything you've ever learned about relationships. If you're starting to see your relationship in a completely new light and you want to understand exactly how to become the woman who touches his soul, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. What I'm about to share next will change everything you thought you knew about feminine power in love.
The power of feminine presence. How your energy awakens his animus. What I'm about to tell you might sound mystical, but it's actually grounded in decades of psychological research. Your feminine energy has the power to awaken parts of a man's psyche that have been dormant for years. Carl Jung discovered that every person contains both masculine and feminine psychological energies, regardless of their biological sex. In men, this feminine aspect, the anima, holds their capacity for intuition, emotional depth, creativity, and spiritual connection. But here's the problem. Most men have been so disconnected from their anima that they don't even know it exists. This is where you come in. When Jung studied couples who had deep, lasting connections, he found something remarkable. The woman's authentic feminine presence actually activated the man's suppressed anima. It's like she became a mirror that reflected back to him the parts of himself he'd forgotten existed. But here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't about being more feminine in the stereotypical sense. This isn't about being submissive, overly nurturing, or playing into outdated gender roles. True feminine presence is about something far more powerful. It's about embodying authenticity, emotional intelligence, and intuitive wisdom. Let me give you a concrete example. Maria noticed that her partner, David, seemed increasingly disconnected and stressed. Instead of trying to fix his problems or demand that he talk to her, she did something different. During their intimate moments, she began practicing what Jung would call active receptivity. She became fully present, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. She stopped performing and started being. She let herself feel deeply, express authentically, and receive him completely. Something extraordinary happened. David began to soften in ways she'd never seen before. He started sharing thoughts and feelings he'd never expressed to anyone. He became more creative, more emotionally available, more spiritually connected. What Maria had done was create what Jung called a temenos, a sacred space where transformation can occur. Her authentic presence gave David permission to access parts of himself that had been locked away since childhood. This is the real secret of feminine power in relationships. It's not about what you do to him. It's about who you become in his presence. When you embody authentic feminine energy, which includes strength, wisdom, intuition, and emotional depth, you create a field of possibility around you that awakens his dormant anima. Think about it this way. Masculine energy, at its core, is about direction, focus, and achievement, but it can become rigid and disconnected without the balance of feminine energy. Feminine energy is about flow, receptivity, and emotional wisdom. When these energies meet in conscious relationship, they create something alchemical, a transformation that neither could achieve alone. But here's where most women go wrong.
They try to force this awakening through emotional demands or manipulation. They think they can argue a man into vulnerability or seduce him into emotional intimacy. But the anima can't be forced. It can only be invited. Jung understood that the anima responds to safety, beauty, and authentic emotional expression. When you embody these qualities, not as a performance, but as a genuine expression of who you are, you become irresistible to his deepest self. This is why some women seem to have an almost magical effect on men. They're not necessarily the most physically beautiful or the most accomplished, but they've learned to access and express their authentic feminine essence in a way that calls forth the hidden depths in their partner. When a man's anima is awakened by your presence, something profound happens. He doesn't just want to be with you physically. He wants to explore the depths of himself that you've helped him discover. You become associated with his own psychological and spiritual growth, with the parts of himself he never knew existed. This creates a form of devotion that goes far beyond physical attraction or even emotional attachment. It's a soul-level recognition. He sees you as the key to his own wholeness, his own integration, his own becoming. But how do you cultivate this kind of presence? How do you become the woman who can awaken his anima without losing yourself in the process? The answer lies in what I call strategic intimacy. And it's the difference between women who are merely desired and women who become absolutely essential.
The art of strategic intimacy, creating healthy emotional dependence. The way to become irreplaceable to a man isn't by making yourself indispensable through neediness or control, but by becoming so authentically yourself that he can't imagine his growth without you. Jung wrote extensively about what he called individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are beneath all our conditioning and social masks. For men, this journey is particularly challenging because they've been taught to suppress so much of their authentic nature. But when you master strategic intimacy, you become the catalyst for his individuation process. Let me be clear about what I mean by strategic. This isn't manipulation or game playing. Strategic intimacy is about consciously creating the conditions where deep connection can flourish while maintaining your own psychological sovereignty. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a master gardener, and his emotional availability is a rare orchid. You can't force an orchid to bloom by pulling on its petals or demanding that it grow faster. But you can create the perfect environment, the right temperature, humidity, light, and nutrients where blooming becomes inevitable. The first principle of strategic intimacy is what I call calibrated vulnerability. This means sharing your authentic self in layers, creating a dance of revelation that invites him deeper without overwhelming his defenses. Most women make one of two mistakes. They either share too much too quickly, which triggers his protective mechanisms, or they share too little, which keeps the connection surface level. Calibrated vulnerability means reading his capacity for emotional intimacy and meeting him exactly where he is, while gently expanding that capacity over time. Here's a practical example. Instead of saying, "You never share your feelings with me," you might share your own emotional experience. "I felt so connected to you last night when you told me about your childhood. It made me realize how much I value emotional honesty in our relationship." You're not demanding anything from him. You're creating a positive association with vulnerability. The second principle is emotional mirroring with boundaries. Jung discovered that we often see ourselves most clearly through the reflection of another person. When you mirror back his emotional states with empathy, but without losing yourself in them, you help him develop emotional awareness while maintaining your own center.
This means you can acknowledge his stress without becoming stressed yourself. You can empathize with his struggles without trying to fix them. You become a clear, calm mirror that reflects his inner world back to him, helping him understand himself more deeply. The third principle is what I call presence over performance. Most women exhaust themselves trying to be what they think he wants. But strategic intimacy is about being so grounded in your own authentic presence that he feels safe to be authentic too. When you stop performing and start being, something magical happens. He stops performing too. The masks come off. The real connection begins. But here's the most important principle: interdependence over codependence. Healthy emotional dependence isn't about him needing you because he's broken or incomplete. It's about him choosing you because your presence in his life accelerates his growth, deepens his self-understanding, and expands his capacity for love. Jung called this conscious relationship, where two whole people choose to grow together, each becoming more themselves through the mirror of the other. When you master these principles, you create what psychologists call secure attachment, the foundation of lasting love. He doesn't just want you because you make him feel good. He needs you because you help him become who he's meant to be. This is the difference between women who are easily replaced and women who become irreplaceable. It's not about being perfect or having no flaws. It's about being so authentically yourself, so emotionally intelligent, and so committed to conscious growth that your presence becomes essential to his own evolution. Remember, the goal isn't to make him dependent on you in an unhealthy way. The goal is to become so aligned with your own authentic power that being with you feels like coming home to himself. When you touch a man's soul through strategic intimacy, you're not just creating attraction, you're creating transformation. And once a man has experienced that level of connection, that depth of being seen and accepted, he doesn't just love you. He recognizes you as essential to his own becoming. So here's what we've discovered together. The power to become irreplaceable to a man has nothing to do with physical techniques and everything to do with psychological and emotional mastery. We've learned that men carry a hidden vulnerability, their suppressed anima, that's been starving for recognition since childhood. We've explored how your authentic feminine presence can awaken this dormant part of his psyche, creating a connection that goes beyond physical attraction. Most importantly, we've discovered that strategic intimacy, the art of creating emotional safety while maintaining your own sovereignty, is what transforms casual attraction into soul-deep devotion. Here are your 3 practical takeaways. First, stop trying to reach him through his body and start reaching him through his emotional core. Create safety for his vulnerability instead of demanding it. Second, embody authentic feminine presence, not performance, but genuine emotional intelligence, intuitive wisdom, and spiritual depth. Third, practice strategic intimacy by offering calibrated vulnerability, emotional mirroring with boundaries, and interdependent growth rather than codependent neediness. Remember, the women who create lasting masculine devotion aren't the ones who master physical seduction. They're the ones who learn to touch a man's soul. They understand that true power and love comes from being so authentically yourself that his growth becomes intertwined with your presence. When you touch him down there, in the depths of his psyche, in the hidden chambers of his heart, in the sacred space of his authentic self, you don't just become his desire, you become his transformation. And that, my beautiful soul, is how you become truly irreplaceable. If this video opened your eyes to a completely new understanding of masculine psychology and feminine power, I need you to do two things. Hit that like button to let me know this resonated with you, and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of conscious relationships. Your journey to authentic power and love is just beginning.